Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. So you're here today with David and Azure. Um, we're going to be talking about, well, this is our Haiti wrap up. So we're going to be talking about the last 3 weeks that we just spent in Haiti. And then for the second half of the program, I will be sharing with you our next big adventure. And we'll be reviewing the 15 new notables that we're going to be focusing on. So let's begin with Haiti. Um, And we've got the screen pulled up here. I can't see the chat room right now. Do we have people in chat?
Yeah, we have
Let me see. I don't.
Christine.
What do I need to
Christine.
do to turn that on? Oh, comments. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's Christine. Hi, Christine. Christ and Betsy. Okay. Okay. So again, we've just spent the last 3 weeks in Haiti. And one of the things I think those of us that have been active from the beginning, Haiti was our fifth nation. Um, each one of our nations is very different from the others. You know, we learn a lot during our 3 weeks in each of the nations, and then we go on to the next, and it's like we're starting all over from scratch again. And Haiti was no exception to that. It was very different than any of the previous or four nations before that we did. Um, one of the things about Haiti, and this is just kind of a pattern I'm starting to pick up on, I think the closer physically a nation is to the United States or to Western Europe, um, the easier it is to make connections. And that's largely I'm suspecting because um, travel to and migration to either the United States or Western Europe is a lot easier. And that's where we're making the connections. When we start in a country like let's say Haiti, there's not a lot of Haitian profiles already on WikiTree to connect to. So we need to often find somebody in the family that moved somewhere else where we have a lot of connections. So that's again where Western Europe and the United States come in. Australia to a degree. Um, some of the nations we get connections there, but Haiti, a lot of our notables in Haiti. Um, Eventually we were able to find somebody that moved to the United States, and that's where the connections come in. But the other thing that was interesting with Haiti that came up was how often this has actually come up. The first part of this i- within our notables, it's amazing how many other notables are in those families. Going back to India, we would have of our 15 notables, we had individuals that had 30 or 40 other family members
Wow.
on Wikipedia, and therefore qualifying as notables as well. If you go
Wow.
back to our India page, you'll see,
Huh.
um, I think the list is about 50. We had the original 15, and we added a second table of relatives, famous relatives, and I think it's up to about 50 names we came up with. So, and we found that in Haiti as well. Almost all of our notables, well, I won't say all of them, but, let's say 2/3 of them were connected to other famous people, and that's how we made our connections. Usually, they were connected to a president. Haiti's had a lot of presidents, they've had a lot of turmoil in their politics, but it seemed like every time we turned around, we'd find another one of our notables had a relationship with in one way or another to one of the presidents, and that opened doors, of course. But the other thing that was really intriguing is with our 15 notables, three of them were related to three of our other notables. So we had three pairs of notables that were related to each other. That's
Wow.
particularly intriguing if you know that when I pick the 15 notables, I really have no idea who these people are typically. I pick them randomly. Usually, the way I start is Googling famous Haitians, and I
Mm-hmm.
get a list of famous people. I don't necessarily know who they are, but in Haiti they are famous. Um, if we go down, the list I see as you pulled it up here, right there at the very top is Henry the First. He was the first king of Haiti, um, first and only king. Um, he was about to be overthrown when he committed suicide in 1820, and
Oh
his
my
son,
goodness.
who would have been his heir, was captured and executed. So that ended the monarchy after just one.
Wow.
But his third great granddaughter was married. If you scroll down, probably about halfway down, you'll see Papa Doc Duvalier. He was a dictator for many years in Haiti, and his son, he died in 71, and his son Baby Doc took over. Baby Doc's wife, Michelle Bennett, she was the first lady. She was the third great granddaughter of King Henry the First, so they were related. Uh,
Wow.
and we had a couple others. Um, I see you're missing a couple pictures are missing from the screen, but the right there at the top of your screen, you'll see Dr. Yvonne Sylvain. She was the first woman in Haiti to become a medical doctor. Her sister was the first woman in Haiti to become a um, anthropologist,
Wow.
and her other sister was a notable women's rights leader. Um, and she had a few other famous relatives. But she was connected to, if you'll scroll a little bit further up, um, it's, two more spots about. Nope, just a little bit further. There you go. Constantine Henriquez. Constantine Henriquez was a uh, athlete who participated in. Well, he was the first black athlete ever to win a gold medal, and he just happened to be related to Dr. Sylvain, which we didn't
Wow.
know. I'm trying to remember the third connection. There was another one that we just came up with. Um, we also had we worked with the Titanic project this time around. We have a president, um, Cincinnatius,
Yep.
whose career was not necessarily all that notable, but it turns out that his nephew, well, the story was that it was his nephew, had gone to Europe and was having trouble finding work. So his uncle said, "Come back to Haiti and I'll get you a job." So he took his family and hopped on the Titanic in order to come home. They were the only black family on the Titanic, and he actually lost his life in the sinking. His wife and his daughters survived. Um,
Huh.
but by connecting President Cincinnatius, we also made a Titanic connection. So that was kind
Wow.
of cool. That's the second time we've connected a Titanic passenger. We had one back in our Argentina tour as well. So it's just kind of amazing how all these people tie in together. And again, if you saw my process for picking them, I have no clue what I'm doing when I'm so it just happens to be they just happen to all know each other. So that's just kind of
That's really neat.
a strange experience as each time I hear about that. Um, so this time around, we were very successful with Haiti. We had people that have heard my talks before understand that it's a little bit difficult to keep track of the counts because there's some technological factors that go into it. But we connected over 220. Well, we added over 220 new Haitian profiles. Um, I say over 220 because once an individual is connected to the main tree, we can no longer we can no longer count additions. So if somebody were to make the connection and then add another 5 or 6 siblings and a bunch of cousins, none of those get counted. And we often do that. We often make the connection and then keep working on the tree, adding additional family members.
Hmm.
So we hit over, as of last night, I think we're at 222 additional family members that were counted. But we had 8 of our 15 notables connected to the big tree,
Awesome.
which is, I think, tied for first place with Argentina. So, that's pretty amazing that, that many people we were able to find family connections for. And our goal for those, I don't know how many people on, watching right now are familiar with our project and what we do, but our goal is to increase the profile of these nations that often get overlooked or are underrepresented, not just on WikiTree, but I think in genealogy in general. So it's not necessarily to connect them to the tree. That's an easy way to keep kind of track of our successes, and it's a fun goal to have. But our real goal is to create profiles and um, get additional people from these countries onto the tree, whether or not we make a family connection or not. Um, Sometime down the road, in a year, 2 years, 5 years, some other person may come along with their family and be able to make those connections. As I said before, it's kind of difficult to make the connection when if we're working with Haitian profiles and there's no other Haitian profiles on WikiTree, we don't have anything to connect to. Um, but hopefully, when those Haitian families come on trying to make their own connections, they'll um, they'll now have a greater opportunity to do so.
Mhm.
Um, oh, as we're looking here, Faustin Workus, he was an interesting character, and he is the one that was connected to, oh, there at the bottom, Jacques Romain. Um, those two men were related. Faustus Workus was a U.S. Marine. He was sent over to Haiti, um, met the queen of a local island, who for some reason or another took a fondness to him and decided to make him king. So he
Wow.
suddenly was the king of this island in Haiti, and he remained king for 3 years until the Marines told him he needed to come home. So he quit being the king and he went home and lived a normal life ever after. Um, he didn't have a relationship with the queen. She didn't marry him or anything like that. She just decided she wanted him to be the king. So he is
That's
a
really
former
interesting.
Haitian king, and he is related to Jacques Romain, who is a Haitian author. Um, Again, just by coincidence,
Huh.
those two happen to be, and I forget the actual connection, but I believe one of their grandmothers was the aunt of the other one, or something along those lines. So once we
Wow.
connect one, the other one fell right into place. Um, so anyway, I'm not seeing any of our primary connectors on. I was telling Azure earlier, unfortunately, some of the individuals who do the greatest work for our project are not able to make it to the chat room, but due to time issues. Um, but I really wish we could get them on here and share some of their stories, because we've got some members who just do amazing work at finding obscure sources and being able to make connections. Um, we happen to find over on another website um, somebody who was working on some notable Haitian profiles on their site, and I contacted him, and that's what he does, is just find famous Haitians and trace their family trees. So he came on over to WikiTree.
Wow.
He'd actually had an account back in 2015 that he was no longer active with, but he was set up. So he came on over and did a bit of work for us, and that was really cool.
That is
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and we've done that a couple times, contacted people. I didn't get a response, but one of our notables had a family member who was over on Ancestry. Um, and one of our biggest challenges, and this is a frustration that we've shared with each other, those of us working on the group, a lot of the family trees are out there, but most other websites are not as strict about sourcing your information as WikiTree is. So
Yeah.
we see some really elaborate family trees that we'd love to post and make our connections, but we can't find any documentation for them. or we get a biography or a obituary where we get tons of names of people, but there's no birth dates or
Yeah.
any other. He was survived by 10 cousins and they list all their names, but we have no idea
Where
who
they're
these
at.
cousins were and how they fit in. Um, so that's been a frustration, is that it's finding the documentation to go along. Not all nations have kept great records for a long time. Most of them are doing so now, but you go back to the 1900s, 1800s, and there
Yeah.
just aren't records out there. So that makes a difference. Now, a lot of the nations we've worked with, including Haiti, have been occupied by other nations that do keep good records. So that's actually been a help
Help.
for us. The
Yeah.
British colonized a lot of these places, and they kept records. So we didn't find it so much with Haiti, but some of our other countries, we actually went to the archives in England and found the records there. India
Mhm.
was a good example of that. Their records are all over in England, not in India. Um,
Right.
so anyway, that kind of wraps it up for Haiti. I don't know that there was a whole lot more to share. I'm just kind of looking down the list here. Um, some really interesting um, some really interesting figures that we met along the way. And one of the things, if you're not familiar with our project, um, and you're thinking about joining, but you're not sure, maybe a little intimidated by the idea of doing research in some of these countries, you don't have to actually do research to participate. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of writing biographies, cleaning up our sources. Some of us that are focused more on the research get so involved in that we don't take the time to really make the project pages look good. And when somebody from outside comes on and visits one of these profiles, we'd like to have them. We want them to be attractive. We want photographs if we can find them. We want the headings, those kinds of things. So even if you can't, or you're not comfortable doing the research, there's a lot of other tasks that need to be taken care of. So we've got lots of room for people of all skill levels and all interest levels. And the other thing that I periodically remind people of is when we leave a country, the information, the pages stay open. So you can go back to any of our prior countries and work on those as well. And we still periodically get connections made on those. And I've gone back and looked at a few of them, and people have done a lot of work since we left those countries on just really making the profiles look nice. So that's really a nice thing to see. Um, all right, so let's move forward here. Does anybody have any questions on Haiti before I move on? I don't see anything in the chat room. So let's talk about our next country. Before you pull it up,
Oh,
there it is. Well, okay, that's okay.
sorry.
Our next country, as those of you that looked quickly, our next country is going to be Malaysia. Malaysia is probably about as far from Haiti as you can get. Um, Malaysia is going to be an interesting nation to explore, and it's gonna be very different. I mentioned earlier that each of these nations has come up with its own challenges. Malaysia is, unlike any of the countries we see, it's our first, um well, I won't say it's our first Asian because India is Asian, but, it's our first, East Asian country, and, it has a rocky history, so I'm not sure what kind of records are gonna be available in Malaysia, but, they have some really interesting, personalities that we're gonna be meeting along the way. Um, Malaysia is going to be a challenge for a couple reasons. One is the language is not real familiar to most of us, and the other is that their naming practices are a little bit, varied. They have several different cultures. We found this within India. There isn't one naming system, or it's a lot of regional naming patterns that we have to deal with. So when I was working with, I'm going to show you a couple of them right now. But as I was coming up with these names, um, they are. It was quite a challenge to figure out where to put the names in the boxes. Let's just say that. And
Yeah.
so that's something we're gonna have to contend with as we move forward with this. Um, we want the names to look correct up on the screen, but we also wanna make sure we're getting, last names and first names separated out, so, and then we've got, the native language versus English. Now Malaysia's unofficial, um unofficially, they use English in a lot of their government records and that. So that may be a boost to our search. So let's scroll down and look at um, look at our notables. For those that again who haven't been on the sites, and so, I don't know why some of the pictures are not loading up right now, but um, I start out with a little bit of uh, kind of summary of the nation. I give you a little bit of history, some of the demographics, religion, language, etc., just so that when you're coming across some of the terms and stuff in the notes, um, you've got a place to go and kind of get a little synopsis of Malaysia and the people and the culture there. Um, so our first individual here, Abdullah Abdullam Kadir. Now, I say this every time. I'm horrible at pronouncing names, especially when it's not in my native language. So, excuse me if I kind of fumble on some of these. Um, he is the father of modern Malaysian literature. So he dates back to the early 1800s, and he's kind of considered, yeah, like I said, he's considered the father of Malaysian literature. Now, I usually don't go back quite that far with the notables, but because he plays such a prominent role, I've decided to add him on here as our first notable. Something that I started back in our first country, which was India. I came up with a bunch of rules that I was going to follow for how to pick the notables, and so far I've not followed those rules on any of our countries because every country's so different,
Yeah.
and some of them have a lot of people to choose from, some don't. But one of the things that I do, if you can actually click on the link to his profile, and let me show again for people that are not familiar with what we do. Um, Initially, I didn't pick any individual that had a profile already on; they were all new. Um, I'll now add profiles, or I'll select notables who already have profiles on WikiTree if they're basically bare bones. If they're already fully established, then I move on to someone else. So if you look at what we've got here, this is one that I did create. I've got his name, I've got his birth date and death date in place, and then just a real short biography that's basically comes off of WikiTree saying who he was. Um, I don't include any family information. I don't include you know, um, the details of his life. If there's something that I think is important for people to know before they tackle his profile, I'll put that in there. Sometimes if there's something I find out about, maybe something unusual about the name or that, I'll add that in. But there really are bare bones, and I leave it up to the membership to figure out what direction they want to go with it. Um, Every once in a while, again, I'll find somebody who has a profile and maybe their parents' names are on there or a spouse. But if they've got much more than that, then I move on to somebody else that is less developed. None of them are connected. If somebody's connected, that disqualifies them because that's, part of our goal is to make connections. So if they're already connected, that kind of defeats the purpose.
Mhm.
So anyway, we can go back to the main screen now, to the Malaysia. So number two here is Wu Lin Ten. He was a scientist in the early 1900s, very early for scientific. They didn't have a lot of PhDs in Malaysia back then, but he was one of the first. He was a medical doctor, and he is the first Malaysian to be nominated for a Nobel Prize. He did not win the Nobel Prize, but he was nominated for a Nobel Prize in medicine. Um, then we have Abdul Rahman, and this is Rahman of Negeri Sembilan, which is a locality within Malaysia. The reason that we put where he was from is because there are a whole lot of Abdul Rahmans in Malaysia. And not only in Malaysia, but a lot of the countries surrounding it, and even in other Muslim countries, if you go into the Middle East and other areas, it's a real common name, and it's a real common name among leaders. So he was the first ruler of the Federation of Malaya. Um, Malaysia, when it first united um, and broke away from um, control of the British colonists, it was called the Federation of Malaya. They then broke off altogether from England several years later and became Malaysia. So you have Malaya and you have Malaysia, same country, but just different periods. So he was the first ruler of Malaya. The
Mhm.
next individual, Tunku Abdul Rahman, same name. He was the first prime minister of Malaysia. So those are two world leaders with the same name, same country, but different time periods. Um, and interesting, just a little side note, I'm also an autograph collector. And back in the 80s, I wrote to Prime Minister Abdul Rahman, and I actually got a letter back from him. So I have kind of a personal connection to him.
Oh, that's
Don't know
really
much,
neat.
but I just something that I throw out there. Um,
That's cool.
the next one is P. Romley. That is his stage name. He was an actor, a filmmaker, a composer, and singer. I haven't reviewed his story completely, but apparently he was real popular in Singapore, Indonesia, and other countries surrounding Malaysia. But for some reason, the Malaysians didn't like him, and he did not have much popularity there until after his death, about 10 years later. He kind of became a thing in Malaysia, and now he's considered their um, entertainment hero, their icon. Um, but during his career, apparently he was not very well received in Malaysia itself. So that'll
Hmm.
be interesting to explore that story a
Yeah,
little bit more.
that is interesting.
Um, yeah. Um, Anthony Soter Fernandez, he was the first cardinal, Roman Catholic cardinal in Malaysia. He's also an archbishop. And he's going to be a bit of a challenge. I didn't think about this till afterwards, but cardinals don't marry and they don't have children. So hopefully we'll be able to find his parents and some siblings. He was a very prominent individual, um, but but hopefully we'll be able to make some connections there. Um, okay, the next one, Malaysia. Up until recently, well, Malaysia has a king, but I prefer not to use living people on on the quest because of privacy issues. We're not able to have a full access to those profiles. So one of my rules has been I always limit it to two, each of our stops to two living individuals. Typically, those are the president and the prime minister, the current president and prime minister of the country. If the country only has one of those people, I then have substituted um, a very famous individual in their place. So, for example, when we were in Kenya, Lupita Nyong'o, the Academy Award-winning actress, I substituted her. Um, but for the most part, I try to leave living people out. Well, this time around, there were a couple extra living people that I really wanted to include. So I broke my rule. I think we have three of them on this one. Um, I was going to put the fourth, which would have been the current king, but I figured out a workaround. I put his mother, who is the former queen and who is
Nice.
deceased. So if we connect her, we'll have our king connected without having to contend with another living profile there. So
Nice.
this individual, I'd like you to open up her profile so I can show you what we're dealing with names. Okay, there's her actual name.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the name down below, her first name is Afzan. That's pretty simple. Um, Rahimahala is her second name. Now, I don't know if that's two first names or if it's a first and a middle name. I don't know how they do that in Malaysia. The second part is what she was known by. Um, Tengku is a title. That's not her name. It somehow correlates to the term queen. Um, so then she's got her name there. Then you'll see the next word there is Binti. That means daughter of. So they have a
Okay.
patronymic system. So if it
Okay.
says bin, bin, you're talking about son of. And if you see binti, that's the daughter of. So
Okay.
everything after that is her father's name. It's not technically her last name. So this is what we're going to have to figure out is in what boxes do all these different pieces go in.
Right.
Um, and then some of them have one or two names that they chose to go by. Some of them go by names that nicknames that aren't even included in their actual names. So we got a lot of bits and pieces that we have to figure out. And again, they also have a lot of would they have titles. So what may be presented as a name isn't actually a name. There's they can have two or three titles depending on what their role in society was. So that's something that we're going to have to kind of explore together and figure out how we want to do this. On top of that, um, you'll see this is all in English here. They do, as I mentioned, English is one of their primary languages in Malaysia. Um, but we do have a desire to include the native language as well. Um, I don't know the native languages, so I didn't go there yet, but that's something that we'll all have to also have to figure out is, how we include that and how do we determine what their native language is if they've got 30, 40, 50 little local tribal languages going on. So a lot to kind of sort out there. And that's what part of this project is all about is these are things that WikiTree hasn't really explored. And, we'll do our best to kind of come up with some of these answers. Okay, so if we head on back, I'll continue down the list. Oh, and I didn't mention, so she's the mother. Um, Again, this is something that I not totally knowledgeable about, but um, Malaysia's royalty, they have several regions that have their own regional kings, and the way I understand it is that they then elect a king to be the overriding king of Malaysia. So, her husband was the king of Malaysia, and her son is the king of Malaysia, but her son didn't inherit that from his father. He was elected, and I think there's something like 16 kings in between the two of them.
Wow.
So,
That's
so
really
it
interesting.
wasn't, yeah, so he didn't inherit it, on his father's death. He inherited the local kingship, but not the Malaysian kingship.
Right.
And so, so that's just it's a different thing, and it's something we have to be careful of, that we don't go into these various countries with our preconceived notions, because this is how we always thought things were done. You got to slow down and make sure you understand their practices, which could be very different from our own.
Right.
Um, okay, and so here again, we're missing a couple pictures. So I got to figure out what's going on there because they show up on my screen. But Anwar bin Ibrahim, he is the current prime minister of Malaysia, and the individual member who first was kind of the inspiration for this program. She Her initial suggestion was that we profile the world leaders from around the world, and we kind of expanded on it from there. The reason we didn't go with just doing the world leaders is, again, because they're all living, and so all of their profiles would be locked. That wouldn't be a very fun project for us. But I do kind of in honor of her initial recommendation, I do always include the current leaders of the country. So Anwar bin Abraham is the current prime minister of Malaysia. One of the things that we've also learned, unlike the United States, a lot of countries are very private about their leaders' personal backgrounds. It's not as easy as you might think to find out, even things like who their wife and children are.
Right.
Um, you might get the names, but you don't get birth dates, you don't get backgrounds. They don't tell you who their parents are. And in fact, when we were in Kenya, um, there are actually newspaper articles that say, meet our new president, and the newspaper would say, we don't know where he was born or where he grew up or where he went to school, but here's what people say, and so they don't even know. And if you think about it, you take someone like we were in Ukraine before, which was part of the Soviet Union originally. Um, Even today, Vladimir Putin, how much do we know about his family?
Right.
Not much. President of the United States, you know everything about their family, their brothers or sisters, their pets, you know all that stuff. But you go to other countries and it's not public like it is here. So we've had trouble. I don't think we've connected any of our world leaders so far. Um, they've been one of our most difficult group of or categories to actually connect. Um, and a lot of that is because they want to put on an air of superiority. And if you know too much about their private life, you might realize they're just like all the rest of us. So I think that's what they're trying to avoid. Um, okay, so our next living person that I wanted to include, just because I'm familiar with him, is Jimmy Choo. Anybody that's interested in fashion knows Jimmy Choo is a world famous fashion designer, um, originally from Malaysia. Um, what I typically will do, and I haven't done it yet, but if I can find the names of his parents, I'll add them, and people then can build off of his parents, without having to worry about getting on the trusted list and all of that to actually work on his profile.
And I think that's
Um,
why the images aren't showing on some of these ones that are
is it
living.
because
The
yeah,
privacy is high, and you can see it because you're the
because I'm
notables
the
on the that profile.
right.
So that's why
Well,
you're
I'm the
able to see.
manager of the
Right.
page too, so that would yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Um, okay, so then our next individual is and I'm gonna perhaps not pronounce this correctly, but Tan Ike Mong. He is a badminton player. The reason I included him, there wasn't a lot of information on him on WikiTree. He does have a profile, but he had about a paragraph of data there. Um, but badminton is the number one sport in Malaysia.
Oh,
Not real
nice.
big worldwide, but their
For
sports
that.
heroes are the badminton players.
So for
Now,
that
most of the
location,
for
that's
that
good.
location. Now, one of the things that they have a lot of very famous badminton players, but they're all still alive. There weren't too many deceased badminton players, so that's why I chose him as he's one of the few notable players that I could find that was deceased. And his brother was also a famous badminton player, so we may have a connection through him as well. So now, if you click on his profile, um, I don't know if yeah, maybe we don't need to actually see the profile, but if you look at his name, that's what I want to show you is
Okay.
his family name is Tan, but that goes at the beginning. If you look in
Right.
the parentheses where I put his name,
Yeah.
in Malaysia they would call him Tan Ike Myong, but Tan is the family name. So figuring out again where we want to put, we want it to look correct up at the top there. That's not the way they would put his name. But if you don't put Tan in the last name at birth box, he doesn't get. You're not going to be able to find him searching, um,
Right.
as correctly. So it's a little bit of a challenge to try to figure out how that goes. And I'm sure we have policies on that, or at least recommendations on it. But I have to kind of brush up on that and figure out um,
How
how we
that all
handle it.
works.
But that's very different from the queen that I showed you, who has a Muslim name. He has a Chinese name.
Right.
There's a huge after native Malaysians, the biggest populations in Malaysia are Chinese, followed by Indian. So we're going to get all three of those kind of naming structures. Um, and once again, I'm going to screw up this name, but Mokhtar Dahari, famous soccer player. I should have put football because that's what they call it. There's my Americanism coming in out there, but football, as we call soccer here, is the number one sport in the world. So every country we've been to um, has a whole list of famous soccer players that we can turn to. So he's one of the Malaysian soccer legends or football legends. Below him is he. This is a famous singer. Um, Sudirman is what he went by. It's as a single name, kind of like Cher and Madonna. He was a one name performer, but he was a very famous singer in Malaysia. Um, Died somewhat young, but still has a huge following over there. After him comes Yasmin Ahmad. She was a filmmaker. She died of cancer several years back, but she also fairly young. Um, but she is very famous over there. She's done some documentary films that had international acclaim. Um, a name people will recognize next is Michelle Yeoh. She just won the Academy Award this past March
Yeah, she's one
for
of my
Best
favorite
Actress.
actresses. Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely wanted to include her and see if we can get her connected to the tree. I don't know a whole lot about her life outside of her her films, um, but that'd be really cool if we can get her. We do have a small Academy Awards project, um, and they've pretty much got all the Academy Award winners with maybe a half dozen or so exceptions connected. But each year when we get a new set of winners, we got to get them on there. And the final one is a little bit of a sad story. This is Shuba J. She was a actress in Malaysia. She did they call them presenters over there. They do kind of like our talk show host. And she sadly was on Malaysia Flight 17 that was shot down over
Oh,
Ukraine. And she died quite young with her husband and her um, very young daughter. I'm not sure what age she was, but from the pictures, she looked like she was 2 or 3 years old.
oh,
So it's a very sad story. And she wasn't a huge superstar, but having read her story, I just felt like she
Yeah.
deserved to be included and honored in some way, memorialized. So, so there's our 15 individuals. Um, I will be putting a link up on G2G tomorrow. In the meantime, if you've tuned in today, you can start early. What you need to do to get to the Malaysia page is go to any of our other national pages, India, Ukraine, Argentina, Kenya, or Haiti, and just go up to the address bar and replace the name of the country with Malaysia, and it'll take you over to that page, and you can get started. Um,
I shared it in
there's
the chat as well.
in the chat. Okay, so there's a link
Yeah.
there if you can click on. Um, and again, for people that are new, there's not a lot of rules as to what you can and can't do. We want to get the profiles looking good. We want to get family members connected, and ideally get them connected to the big tree. We are probably I th- calculated it yesterday. I think I came up with 30% of our notables for the last 5 nations have been connected. So that's not bad.
That's good.
One out of three. Um, India, we didn't have any connected, but I think Argentina and Haiti, we had 8 of our 15 connected, so that's over half. So it just depends on the country and what's available out there. Malaysia is going to be a tough one, I'm sure. But again, our team has
You're
surprised
getting
me
it
every single
started.
time.
Well,
Yeah,
and you're getting it started. You're getting those profiles on
yeah,
there, and
yeah. Well,
then
that's it. I mean, we're already got
you'll be
15 more profiles than we had a week ago.
yeah.
So
And it's
that's
cousin
a start
bait.
right there.
It's
Yeah.
cousin bait drawing more people to WikiTree to
It
build
is,
their
and what we really hope to do is
profiles.
get, when somebody comes on that may be from Malaysia or have Malaysian background and they see nothing about Malaysia anywhere on WikiTree, that's gonna be discouraging. So, we wanna
Yeah.
get some stuff up there and, as with Haiti, we have, 220 more profiles than we had 3 weeks ago. So there's something.
Yeah.
Um, we've had a lot of people comment, I know just in my time on WikiTree, I've seen it in the chat room of we're very American centric or Western European centric, and that's part of the reality. It's an American based company with a lot of American participants, but anything that we can do to start getting some of these other areas of the world on board. Now, genealogy isn't um, necessarily as popular in some of these other countries or as relevant to them as it is in Western nations. So that's something that we face also, and we've also got countries where oral tradition is what they go by, and they don't have a lot of written records. So,
Right.
um, so there's there, or boundary changes, and all that kind of stuff falls into it. So it's a challenge, but the more we can get up there, the more likely we are to get those people drawn in. And the other thing, this ties in with the notables as well as with the nationalities is, you may just have school kids that are doing book reports or research projects or whatever, and um, they stumble on over to WikiTree, and if we've got nice, entertaining profiles to look at, that's gonna draw these people in and maybe spark some interest that wasn't already there. If they come over and they're just well, they don't find anything, or if they, find skeletal profiles that have no information on them, that's
Yeah.
not gonna impress them. So, we really wanna I like to see each profile as kind of a little work of art, and,
Yeah.
the
A show
better they look and the more organized they are, the more likely are to attract additional people onto the
definitely.
site. But okay, so I think that's about all I have for Malaysia. We're going to be there for 3 weeks, and we're going to see what we can do. I have Paul and Darren are two of our our most active participants, and again, it just amazes me. One thing I'll say, because the records, the traditional records, birth certificates, death certificates, those things are not either they don't exist or we don't have access to them. Um, we've had to go with a lot of alternative sources. And one of the places that we find a lot of information is going on over to Google Books
Yeah.
and looking for biographies.
Mhm.
And you'll find biographies that were written, it's sometimes autobiographies that were written by these people that, maybe 10, 20, 30 years old. And they often will have, a section on, chapter 1 will be all about their ancestry and where they came from. So
Right.
that's been, a neat kind of resource to use. Um, newspapers.com, finding, obituaries is an obvious one, but, when a world leader takes over, for example, often you'll see all kinds of profiles about them in the paper. Um, Sometimes you'll get, with an actress or a sports star, some paper will just decide to do an interview of them and ask them about where they came from and what their inspirations were. Oh, there's Darren. I was just just talking about you. I was saying Darren and Paul are two of our most active members, and they've done some amazing work at making connections and finding family members. But again, we're using some unusual resources, and what we've started catching on to doing is going on over to Ancestry and some of the other sites and looking to see if somebody else has worked on these trees, and even if they don't have all the information we need there, by contacting them, um, they may have sources even if they're not on even if their sources aren't on Ancestry, they may have them available and be willing to share them with us. So we've
Yeah.
had a little bit of success there. And something I've thought about doing, I haven't done it yet, but I'm wondering if we found emails, let's say for the prime minister, if they have what do they call it, a
Public
publicity
relations. Public
yeah,
relations.
that's the word, public relations office, if they
Yeah.
might be able to give us some information directly. I hadn't thought about doing that before, but I saw a link to the current prime minister of Malaysia has a web page, and I
Yeah.
thought, maybe we should maybe
Reach
he'll just
out.
maybe he'll give us the information.
Yeah.
Mm, So, but that's the
Great
kind of stuff
idea.
that we're having to do, um, is, is we're not gonna find a lot of this stuff on Ancestry because they haven't, um to my knowledge, done a lot of Malaysian records or Haitian records, etc. Uh, but the information is still out there somewhere, and
You have to think outside the box.
yeah, exactly. Which is what makes it fun.
And like
Yeah.
Google newspapers,
hmm
that's a good place to look too.
Well, and
It's
and
with
there.
free.
Oh, here's another little trick: is if you find a picture that includes a family member,
Yeah.
and then you do a reverse image search, and you look for other websites that has that picture.
Yeah.
Or you could even do it with a name. If you find the name of a brother or a sister and you Google them,
Mhm.
you often find out that they have their own newspaper articles, or you go to newspapers.com and do a search for the brother. Um, he may not be internationally known, but in his local community, he may have quite
Yeah.
a bit of write-ups, and we found some success with that, or an obituary for the brother, etc. That's something that we normally would do anyway. But yeah, if you search for the celebrity themselves, you're gonna get 1,000 hits that all tell you the same thing, but you search for an aunt or an uncle or somebody like that, you might get a story about that celebrity, but it's gonna have family information in it.
That's nice.
So it's just a little trick that we figured out there. Um, I don't know if Darren wants to contribute anything of his, experience with Haiti before we wrap up. Um, I know he's come in late here, but Darren, I was telling them that one of our frustrations is that we find a lot of names, but no sources or dates and places to tie into them. So it's like it's like having that word on the tip of your tongue. We've got the name, but can't we can't use it, and that's really frustrating. But we've now we can for a few profiles, we can do like a parent with an estimated birth date. If all we have is the name, you can do that for the parent, but when you've got a second cousin or a great aunt or somebody like that, it's a lot harder to start estimating and doing
Yeah.
that. So anyway. All right, so there we are. If nobody has any questions, um, oh yeah, John is saying he plays badminton. He missed that piece of it, but one of the things we talked about is that badminton is apparently the number one sport in Malaysia. So I had to include at least one badminton player there.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I
Okay.
guess
Well,
we'll
yeah.
sign off. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you.
Okay. And again, I'll have it up. I'll have the the link up tomorrow on G2G. But in the meantime, like you just replace one of the other country names with Malaysia, and that'll take you on over to the site, and you can get started.
All
All
right.
right, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll
Bye.
see you in Malaysia. And